Call the meeting to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Marie Claire Gorham. John Krischer.
Here.
Susan Murphy.
Here.
Phil Pardue.
Here.
Mary Jo Williams.
Here.
We have
All
a
right.
quorum. Thank you.
Forum, okay. We have a pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started with the public appearances, I'm going to need a motion. We're going to pull item number 5 and bring it back at a later date. That's to discuss the draft agreement between Moore, Rendell, Yodel regarding the Harrison Memorial Library Centennial Restoration Project, available and provide comments to City Council. Well, if I get a motion to put that back to a later date.
We just don't have anything to look at.
We have
yet.
nothing right now.
Okay. Make a motion to pull item 5 off today's agenda.
A second.
All right, could I have a roll call for that?
Susan Murphy.
Yes.
Phil Pardue.
Yes.
Mary Jo Williams.
Yes.
John Krischer.
Yes.
Approved. Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll move down. Do we have any public appearances? Anybody on Zoom? Anything like that? All right. How about announcements from the trustees? Anybody have anything going on?
Just want to thank Alex and the
Yes.
foundation again for a lovely fundraiser last night. It was excellent. The program was great.
It's really
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you very much. It was a very great program. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to announcements from the library director.
I don't have any announcements at this time.
Okay. All right. Let's go. We'll move on to approve the minutes of the March 26th, 2025 meeting. Anybody have any changes to the minutes? All right. Wait till she gets back.
Sorry, my pen ran out of me.
Okay. All right.
What to do with the computer? I love that.
All right. Could we have a motion to approve the minutes of the March meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes for the March 26, 2025 meeting.
I second it.
A roll call, please.
Susan Murphy.
Yes.
Phil Pardue.
Yes.
Mary Jo Williams.
Yes.
John Krischer.
Yes.
Approved. Thank you.
All right. Let's move on now. Second item, we received the librarian's report for March.
So nothing major of note for the month of March. We're, ticking a little bit ahead of where we were in terms of circulation over last year. There was a question at the last meeting about the registration numbers for cardholders. We saw a surge late last year in online card registrations. That's something that we shut down. There were a number of libraries, and I've been tracking this, there were a number of libraries in California, Hayward Library was one of them, that were still doing online registration as a holdover from the pandemic that saw a huge surge from people in Southern California, of all things. And so the suspicion is that online registration ended up on Reddit, which is an interesting thing, that it's some sort of everybody register and use your public library online, or use a public library online. So I have been talking with our technical services librarian since early January about, one, it's time, April is the month when we usually purge all of the cards that are expired. So you'll see those numbers tick down. But also move to have people come in and validate their cards with their IDs. So come in, check in with us over a certain time period. And so for online cards, for people that don't do that, those ones will be purged. So you'll see us go back down. Typically, when you look at our statistics pre-pandemic, we have between 8,000 and 10,000 card holders. So you'll see that number go down after that period of time. But it was a weird anomaly that other California libraries experienced as well, and we the suspicion is online registration went up on Reddit. Why people
It's also a way
use-
to get access to ebooks
That is,
for libraries that you
right.
get 3 a month. Well, if you member of
Pick
4 or
as
5
many,
libraries.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
would it be could you geofence it so that people within our normal area, meaning the Carmel, the Influence area, Pebble Beach, people who normally use the library,
Right.
to allow them to still register online, and then people from the rest of the country, it'd be zip code dependent?
Yes, there is that possibility to continue to do that. And I know that, we have a whole spreadsheet going of how other libraries are handling their online registrations, because we, like for instance, somebody that's homebound and can't come into the library, we want them to still be able to do that. So like Monterey County handles that on a case-by-case basis. So, we'll send you a library card, you validate your ID online with us over the phone.
Right.
We'll do that. So there are ways for us to do that, yes.
Right, I'd just like to avoid a mixed message, because we're saying, we're providing newspapers online, we're providing books online.
Exactly.
But you got to come into the library. But we want to make sure we protect our core patrons, because it's expensive to do ebooks.
It is.
So make sure that it's just our core patrons.
And that's why,
Geographic area.
yeah, and that's why I've been slow to, as we've been looking at these different models, slow to roll this out and to think about how to do this, because exactly what you said, I don't want to send a mixed message.
Right.
Yeah.
I do want the homebound folks, the people who really can't get to the library. We're not open on Saturdays, so they work during the week and the hours don't match up. But
Right, to have
yeah,
access.
they should be able to access the libraries.
I agree.
Yeah, and it's going to be, and I want to give enough grace period for people to be able to do that.
Okay.
You have to, yes, so yes. And so that explains the anomaly that you pulled last month, Mary Jo.
Okay,
the
thank you.
cardholders. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Could I ask
Because it
another
didn't make any sense.
Yes.
Just on the nonfiction's down about 10%. Is that a function of having fewer nonfiction books, or people just not checking them out? Are we not getting the same title? I mean, is there?
Our nonfiction section is pretty robust. Nonfiction's up and down. It's one of the things with nonfiction is people want the latest books, and then once it goes down into the nonfiction section, unless you're a hardcore nonfiction person or a history buff, it doesn't circulate the same way that fiction does. It just, once you pass that 1 or 2 year mark, it doesn't circulate that same way. So I think we'll see an up and down with it, but I don't think the down 10% for this month is indicative of nobody's reading nonfiction anymore. We're going to see it decline all the way to 0.
Right. Well, I guess my question was, are we curating it correctly? Are we buying the right books for nonfiction? And what I'm hearing is that, well, we are. It's just sometimes the authors have blockbuster books that people want, and sometimes they don't. So it's really a function of the perceived quality of the authors.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's all I was asking.
One more thing about the zip codes. We have an awful lot of second homeowners in this town. So I guess if they came to the library and they're here for the summer, we could validate they're out of state zip, because they are paying taxes,
Right.
owning a home here, and they are part-time residents. A lot of them do become full-time, but that way we'd be able to.
So is the concern that if you have if somebody's a second homeowner here, and they wanted to register, they would register with their Texas address rather than
That's a curiosity thing.
And
That's,
so for me, if you're your second homeowner, you're registering with your local Carmel address.
yeah,
Right.
That
that's
makes you
true.
the patron.
That's,
So I'm not sure, but is there something in there I don't understand, or?
well, no, you have a point there.
No, I think
That's
that John's, to your point about people who are homebound, we don't, as part of this process, don't want to exclude our second homeowners, because one of the reasons why they sign up for a library card, one, probably because they love libraries, but also it makes them feel a part of the community while they're here, and we want to honor that, and they often go on to become full-time residents.
Right.
And so that's part of this thinking in this process, is not excluding that part of our community.
Okay, as long as we think it through. I
Maybe
guess.
what would be helpful is to understand how the purge actually works. So is it people with no activity in a year, or, you don't
That's-
necessarily have to explain it to us right now, but that might help us
So,
have a better picture of
Yeah.
what this whole thing
So
is
everybody
like.
has to revalidate at
Yeah.
a certain period. isn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
and so when I talk about the patron purge, and you see this in tiny little numbers over patron database purge, that's for people whose cards are expired. They haven't renewed with us. That means they haven't had any activity over 2 years.
Yeah.
So we've given them time to come back, what's going on. And
Right.
so after 2 years, that gets purged. And so you usually see that drop in patrons. When we talk about validating library, that's completely separate than this.
Okay.
We're not,
Okay.
so we're just focused on who hasn't used their card in 2 years so that we have accurate numbers for
Okay.
library usage, people who are actively using the library, whether it's online or in person or a combination thereof. So the validating the cards, separate initiative, separate process. That will be ongoing through the spring as we
Okay.
figure out the best way to do it to confuse people the least.
Okay, good.
So one final follow-up question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm living in San Diego and I've registered for this library, and I have never been here, oddly enough. But it's through an online registration, and I'm using the e-books. I'm using the library every 2 years.
Right. So you wouldn't be caught up in the patron database purge because your online card would be active.
So how would we?
So
you
then
would come up with some kind. You're thinking through the process.
we're
now.
thinking through the process in terms of, okay, so you are using the card online, but you're not here local, but we want you to come in and show us that validate your address, basically. Because remember, in order to continue to be a recipient, we'll get into that later in the meeting about state funds, we have to allow anybody that's a California resident to get a library card with us. So there's nuance to this in terms of, but we can have our policies in place for when you register for a card, showing your proof of address, whether that's in San Diego or not. So if you can't come from San Diego to validate your address, we can say, well, you can't use our library, then we need you to validate your address, whether it's in person through a piece of mail.
Okay,
but again, so if that makes sense. And then again, exceptions for people that are homebound and simply cannot. There has to be that piece of things. So again, there's lots of nuance to this. We're still figuring it out, and I don't want to confuse people.
So I think that, if you're receiving California state funds for the library and things like that, that they can require us to have everybody in the state. But if they start pulling funds, and it's now local funds supporting the library in no state, that becomes a little bit more of an issue on where you can, but you might want to think about tightening up the requirements where they actually have to show up.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Periodically, no mailing in. I mean, if you're not showing up at the library, are you really a patron?
Yeah, that's
Good questions.
Yeah.
that's really,
So to be continued on that
Yeah,
front.
that's for-
And I'll be bringing forward more information for all of you
Be good.
for discussion.
Yeah, otherwise we just become a cheaper Amazon Prime reading type
yeah.
thing.
it's
Right,
true,
exactly.
true.
Kindle.
The reason I brought up about the part-time second homeowners was I met a woman this weekend, and she said the first thing when they bought their second home here, the first thing she told her husband, I want a library card. She flew back to New York and said, before you come back home, I want a library card from the Carmel
Yeah.
Library. So, I mean, people who really want to be involved in the library, so you have to make a common,
Yeah.
I get a lot of people at the market who are second homeowners or come here for 2 months out of the year, and they make sure they get library cards.
yeah, that's something, she was adamant about it. That she really wanted the card, so I mean, something we're gonna have to probably work out here. And as you're saying about the funds, when we get into the budget, then we can really
Right. Well,
see how we're gonna look on that.
so it is a free library. So
Yeah.
people should, if you come in, you
Sure.
should be able to get a library card.
Right.
But when we go online, that means it's free to the world.
Yeah,
India, Ukraine,
yeah,
France, you pick the country anywhere in the world,
Right.
and they now can join the library if you don't tighten up the online.
Right, and that, while that in theory is lovely, that everybody's reading books online together and we're sharing resources, that drives up our holds list, that puts, undue burden on us for purchasing to keep our holds list down to mirror what we do in practice with physical materials. So it's not practical for us to support the entire world's reading habits
Right.
with the budget that we currently have.
yeah, that's something that we get into budget,
Yeah.
we can get into that.
So, and everything else overall in the librarian's report, I mean, we're seeing good numbers for program attendance and just library usage overall. It's been very busy in town.
The kids' libraries, when I said there Friday afternoon, phew, that's a busy place on a Friday afternoon. It
That's our
really is.
drop-in craft day.
Oh, wow. I can't believe the number of kids.
It's
All
great.
right.
It's fantastic.
Let's receive the treasury report for March 2025 and approve check register. Since she's not here, we're going to move that on to next week, next meeting.
We can, or we can go through, if there's any questions, I can answer
Okay,
them.
We'll approve the check register. How's that sound?
Well,
There's no,
we can go through the budget, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do the budget,
Yeah.
yeah. We can do that if you want to.
So the 91,000 under budget is just that timing issue between, before the
Yeah.
foundation makes their quarterly.
Right.
That's all that is, right?
exactly, so you see that delay. So we do have the check from them that did get deposited, it's just not reflected in the March yet.
Fair enough.
And then you see the LAIF reserve is, previously was 175,000, that's the unrestricted reserve, is now at 190,000, because that $15,000 transfer that we made back to reserves, that was partially unexpended funds from strategic planning and the additional $8,000 that we received from the Friends of the Library
Okay.
is now there. And then everything else in terms of the check register is just our usual spending. So you'll see some Amazon purchases for DVDs, performers like Mary Lee and Megan Cassimus, who does our Baby and Me yoga, and then book ordering, Ingram, Baker and Taylor.
Yeah, there's,
But we're on track. Right now, as of March, we're a little bit under budget. We're 68%, and I'll go into more detail later, but we're 68% of overall expenditures. But we always have a push towards the end of the year, especially with ordering. Just like movie season, there's the summer blockbusters that come out late May, early June. So we see a surge in publishing then. We also see it in December, too. So I anticipate that, well, it looks like we're poised to be well under. We're going to catch up with spending in the next
okay.
2 months.
Should we look at funding a few things that we might need?
Yes, I will talk about that under future agenda items because I have
Okay.
some suggestions to the board for the upcoming month, next month's meeting.
All right.
So it ends, 30 June's the end of the fiscal year for the
That's
library.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Adopt
need
the
to
check
approve.
register?
Yeah, you have adopt-
approve the check
have
register.
a motion to adopt the check register?
I move we adopt the check, list.
Do I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay, have a roll call?
Susan Murphy,
Yes.
Phil Pardue,
Yes.
Mary Jo Williams,
Yes.
John Krischer.
Yes.
Approved, thank you.
All right. All right. Alex received a report from the foundation. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Trustees. Morning, everyone. So last night, CPLF hosted our 13th annual fundraising event with Susan Arlene. And I just want to thank all of you who could attend and attended for being there, and to Ashley and all the librarians for volunteering. Because it takes a lot of people to put this on. So we really appreciate all the effort and help and support. We had approximately 500 attendees. We've been receiving excellent feedback about the program. We have definitely exceeded our goal, which this year was 175,000. I don't have the final numbers in. They'll come probably next month. But great showing of people in support. Really terrific. And then last night, during our opening remarks, we were able to talk a little bit more about the capital campaign and get everybody more up to speed. It was a great opportunity since there were like so many people in the audience and potential donors. And then we were able to let them know that we had raised the $5 million as the matching, and that we were still looking to raise 2.5 by June 30th. So that was a really good opportunity. And hopefully that all my voicemail will be full of people on my emails who want to help with the project. And let's see what else. We're currently in the process of finalizing next year's budget, so information that you have, for us, that would be great to know. And then we have one more distribution this year to finalize for this year for the $91,500. And lastly, we have introduced 2 excellent new board members that will be voted on in May as well. And then in June, we have our Sterling Circle, which I'll report back on that next month. But it's been a busy month.
Very busy.
Yeah, but really, really terrific, and I'm excited. Any questions at all, or anything? Thank you.
So what, a quick question, actually, 2 real quick. So when do y'all finalize your budget for the next year?
So right now, I am working fervently on the budget, and we will be voting on it in May. Typically, that is our budget, because our last meeting for the Finance Committee is in June, but we typically put that to bed in May.
Okay, so we need, at some point, so if we're possibly at, possibly losing funds and needing more, when would we need to give you an idea of what that would be so that you can move it into your budget? Because I think we're now having a little bit of a problem in that this is our April meeting. We're not going to know till our May meeting, till we meet again. That's after your probably budget meeting, so I'm seeing a disconnect here as we go
So
through.
one of the things that I was going to propose as we worked through to our budget topic item number 8 is I think we need to have a special budget meeting because everything is so different and up in the air this year. At this point, your meeting must be on the 12th.
Is that
Monday? That's a Monday?
Might be the following Monday.
So I was looking at May the 14th for us to call a special budget meeting because I think we need more time with the budget than we normally do.
Yes.
And that would give us a first round of approval. And I think that first round would be enough to give the CPLF, present them with the ask, and then continue to finesse the rest of the budget for us later in May and into June if we need to.
Right. Yeah, I think we owe it to the foundation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have to do, I've been looking over some of the cuts with Ashley, and they're kind of scary. We don't really know how bad they're going to be, but as of now, it's significant, the cuts. And they keep cutting more programs. And the scary thing to me, I don't think we're going to really know till October how bad we're really going to be hit. We'll have a general idea right now, but every day there's something else being cut, and it really affects us quite a bit. And do not want to put any strain on the foundation. We're doing is cut back as much as we possibly do. We'll make everything very tight and as thrifty as we can possibly be, but I don't think, looking it over right now, I'm a little scared about it because it does not look good. It looks very awesome, very.
Right, and so I think that we need, after this discussion today with about the federal and state budget impacts, getting some direction from the trustees on that. I think I mentioned in previous meetings, I've had a draft budget going since January and been toggling with it, and John and I have been discussing it. At this point, I've kept the CPLF disbursement status quo. So if that helps you any for your mindset as you're toggling with your budget, I've kept the disbursement because over the previous 2 fiscal years, the foundation has provided us with increases in our budget because of cost of living increase, inflation, and those things going on. So I've kept everything pretty much status quo and been conservative. But I do think we need to have a special meeting before the later May meeting. 1, because things keep changing. 2, to give the foundation something more solid to work off of as they do their budget planning as well.
Right, and I guess my question to the foundation, you may not know the answer right now, is so how would you really like to have the budget input in that, we're going to a top line, we've asked for upgrades in our additions and funding, and the foundation supported it every year. So now we're seeing downturns, and so we're trying to meet that top line by cutting services. Do you want to know what services we're cutting and what the cost is? Because you may say that, all right, we appreciate you trying to keep in this top line, but we're willing to fund these additional services as it goes through. I mean, would that be helpful to you if we broke it out like that?
Yes, very much so. We want to know where
Yes.
pain is and how we can help alleviate it.
Okay.
We can do that.
If we can do that,
Absolutely.
we want to, so we want to know.
Mhm.
Right. And my last question is, and I don't know who this is for, but is there a problem with the ruble negotiations going on, or getting the
No.
contractor? There's no hard spots or anything like that?
No.
It's just taking time.
It's just taking time.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it
Yeah.
is. And I believe there's a meeting later this week
Yeah,
to go through that. So it's just
Yeah.
taking time.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. I
Yeah.
just didn't know if there's
I
something
think
we
it will
need help
be
with.
hopefully expedited and will be.
Yeah, we'll keep if we do a special meeting on May 14th, we will have the same item number 5 here to discuss in the hopes that that is ready to go. That way it can get in front of council as soon as possible.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great.
For our special meeting, do we have it in there too, just in case it comes up in between?
Absolutely. We will. Any meeting that we have going forward, we'll have a placeholder on there and be ready to discuss and make a recommendation to the city council.
Okay.
And we've already,
I had another thought kind of similar to yours, Phil, but given that you just said, or we may not know until October, I guess the other thing would be a contingent ask to the foundation, right? That, do you know what I mean? Like, we really don't know, but so we're gonna, we could talk about this more in May, but I'm just kind of asking Alex if that's an idea that would fly with the foundation. We keep things status quo, but we know this much is potentially at risk. So
Well,
how to do that.
yes.
So there's just different ways to think about it. I
Right,
guess.
so if we did a mid-year budget adjustment,
Right.
could we ask them to do a
Yes.
mid-year budget adjustment? And
Yeah,
that's,
and over the years, there's also times when the libraries come to us with special projects and things like that don't
Right.
happen within the budget time period
Right.
that we typically approve. And I would just say that I am very much aware, obviously, of what's
Yeah.
happening, and I've
Yeah.
even included that in our opening remarks.
Yeah.
I wanted last night, I
Yes,
wanted
you
people
did.
to
It was
understand, because we do have a lot of donors in the audience, and so just like the libraries experiencing, this potential severe cutback or certain things being terminated, same with the foundation, that with the markets the way they are, it's been very challenging as well. And so, we are in a position where we want to be as helpful, and we want our library to stay robust and be the community treasure that it is.
Yeah.
And we will do everything in our power to make it so. But I just wanted to let you know, also from a foundation perspective,
Sure.
that our portfolio has been affected. The stock market has been very unstable and volatile, and so and that's what we have to. Those are our challenges
Sure.
in fundraising right now,
And you're taking
and
our-
grants, and
Right.
because it's also right. So we're trying to get creative here.
And there's an additional commitment coming along
Correct.
with the
Right.
building, which is going to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
it's all,
Right.
makes what could be easy very hard, challenging
Yes.
in this financial environment.
Yes.
these are unprecedented times. This is very, very unusual. So
Yeah.
we're all dealing with something that nobody's really thought was going to happen, and now we're trying to scramble to make it work.
Yes.
We appreciate all your help.
Thank
Yes,
you.
definitely.
Yeah, we
Appreciate it.
appreciate the library. So.
Well, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Skip over 5. Receive report from the Library Relocation Ad Hoc Committee.
so work continues apace, and I'll have Mary Jo chime in, Marie Claire. The three of us have been talking. We started a whole new spreadsheet to compare and contrast. We have 2 likely locations. I think at the last report out, we had 1 location. Now we have another location, which is great. So we are working on understanding, with both spaces, what the potential needs are in terms of making it work for the library. What are the costs associated with that in terms of physical upgrades, enhanced IT, if we need that kind of thing, wireless? Are there any rental or lease fees associated with it? And then getting even deeper in, what is our square footage? How many shelves can we fit in? How many cubic feet is that? So how many volumes can we bring with us? What is the cost of the shelving and the moving and all of those things? So we're really getting into the nitty-gritty with all of those things. I don't have a report out on those locations just because we're still in process and talking to both of those spots, but I feel confident that we're going to have a good place for us to relocate to here in town. Mary Jo, do you want to add
No,
anything?
that's great, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So work continues apace.
All right. Okay. We'll move on to item number 7, receive a presentation of draft strategy plan for 2025 through 2027 and discuss and provide staff with direction.
All right, so I'm going to hop up and take the podium now, and I want us to, last month you all got a first look at the strategic plan, the draft strategic plan. There were a few comments. I know when the packet went out initially, I hadn't incorporated in those comments. It was the old draft strategic plan attached. I reincorporated those in yesterday. So we'll go over those, and those were around our resilience and sustainable goals, specifically goal number 4. I thought we could go through each of the strategies, each of the goals, piece by piece, wordsmith those if that would be useful, have some conversation around those, and see where we land.
Okay.
Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Okay. So as I mentioned at the last meeting, we did some wordsmithing with our mission statement with the goal for the mission statement, to be a little more succinct than the one we had. And I feel very proud of us in getting it down to this one sentence. If you are so inclined and want to go back to look at our strategic plans going back, into the early aughts, our mission statement was over half a page long. So this is more bite-sized. We are the heart of our community. We are cherished by our village and a welcoming place for learning, enjoyment, and connection for everyone. And I think you really see that when you come into the library these days. People are there for books. They're there for bingo night. They're there for, a dog man party like yesterday at the kids' library. But if there's comments, wordsmithing for this, please let me know and we can tweak it. This went through several rounds with our strategic planning committee. We had, I think, 3 versions we settled on, and then I took it to the library staff and said, how do you feel about this? How does this reflect what you feel your day-to-day is? And this is what was the winner of our survey with the library staff. And they had additional wordsmithing.
2 words.
2 words.
When you say we are, that's what we are. A mission is what we will be. So it says, to be the
To be.
cherished.
All right. I like that.
That's the only thing. Everything else is fine. I've written many mission statements,
I'm sure.
whether I
Yes.
wanted to or not.
Thank you, Phil.
That would be a statement of what we are based on where we want to go.
To be. Thank you. Any other comments on the mission
No,
statement?
Or you could say, to remain.
I like that too, because that was one of the things that we discussed was the constancy of the library and the value that our community places
Right.
on that.
So remain instead of are.
To remain
To remain.
Okay,
cherished by our village.
To remain to remain cherished by our.
okay. Yeah, I like
that's
that
good.
too.
That's good.
Because it's not new. It's our legacy and our future.
But yes, it's our legacy and our future. I
Are
like
you okay with that?
What if you put it at the beginning, to remain the heart of our, should remain the heart of our community.
Yeah, that would
and
work
then
too.
Cherished by our, and then just cherished by our village. I don't know, sorry. I just think it's great. I really like it. It's warm.
I think I would say that, to keep it like it is our mission, the heart of our community to remain, just because it kind of sets it.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, I like that too.
Either works.
Any consensus on to remain going at before the heart of our community, or taking the place of we are, or getting rid of we are completely? Any preference either way?
Yeah, I mean, there's something we said for it to remain the heart of our community, cherished by our village, a warm and welcoming place. And a
I like
connection
that.
for
I like,
everyone.
yeah,
Which
to
is
start
your
off that
house.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very nice.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
okay,
agree.
great.
Okay.
Then we will make that change.
Very nice.
To remain the heart of our community, cherished by our village, and a welcoming place for learning, enjoyment, and connection for everyone.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes,
great.
Grand.
Great.
Okay, and this is in there, we've got all of
So
our stats.
These slides are still under construction, right?
These slides are still under construction, so I'm moving things around, updating budget numbers, so as we get closer to the budget
Yeah.
season and statistics, they're in here as placeholders. I think the visuals are helpful as part of a strategic plan
Like 'em.
to know who we are, what we do. They're not perfect, but even going so far as to include sections, you can see that part got a little cut off. Our buildings, continually a challenge in terms of identity, but understanding what's happening in each buildings and the building's history too. And so you'll see there's 2 for, and I need to change this to children's. I've heard community feedback for people who did look at this, and it is out there and people are looking. Preference for the word children's over kids.
Yeah.
So I think I caught it other places in the strategic plan, but you can see I didn't catch it in the title, but other places I did. So yes, these slides are continuing to be refined. And then yes, local history department, of course. This is just a quick, if you don't want to go through every single detail and goals and objectives, our goals, the strategies, without the in-depth in objectives included here. So I'm going to skip over the next 2 slides, and we're going to get into goals and strategies and objectives. So goal 1 is a carryover from our previous strategic plan. Some things we did carry over, some strategies we carried over. Some of the objectives are carried over or tweaked. Not all of them. We have some new things that show up. In thinking about our goals, in light of the quick discussion that we just had with regards to funding and budget, and challenges across the board for our city, for the foundation, we tried to be cognizant of it's kind of a live within your means situation. What can we do in terms of funding, but also staffing? We have to have people to be able to do the things that we want to get done. So goal 1, be a center for learning, enjoyment, and community connection. Our strategy 1 is to provide interesting and informative programs for all ages. Top of our objective list is to provide and establish regular weekly hours for tech help. This is a continual ask at the library. I think we've actually nailed down a potential day and time already, because what happens is people come in with their devices, and whoever's on the desk, their time is then monopolized with helping somebody to log into their Apple account and they want to download Libby and do some of the things that the library is offering, and their technology skills just aren't there. So that is very important for us to start providing that as a service. Any questions about tech help as an objective for us? No? Next objective, continue to collaborate with the Carmel-by-the-Sea and Pebble Beach schools on a regular basis to understand how we can support what they've got going on in their strategic plans. So what are their goals? How are they educating their students? What are their gaps in what they're able to provide, and can we do that? Do they need, should we be providing more art classes because they're not able to do those things? Or is there, what opportunities do we have to collaborate them to make sure that we're supporting them and enriching our children's lives who are using the library and going through those school systems? So that's, Captain Cooper's school, Rivers School, Tularcitos, Stevenson School next door to us. Questions?
Well,
Yes.
So you're focusing on elementary schools. Do you want to say that? Or I mean,
I just listed those, and it's because we're most actively involved with them at the moment.
Yeah.
But I would love to get the upper schools involved as well. So our teen librarian has been working with some of the clubs. It's a little bit different in working with them, and the middle school as well. So I think that the reason why this is written more broadly is because I think we need to enhance what we're doing with the schools, not just the elementary school relationships that we've built up right now, but the upper grades as well.
I'm just thinking about your comment of your limited resources, and is that, could you really take on K to 12 or not? It's a question. It's not a
no, and it's a good question.
Criticism. It's just,
and some of these things are, and I think it's something that we should strive for. I think it's very human dependent. So, for instance, right now we have a terrific teen librarian, and this is the first time since I've worked for the library over the last 13 years I've been here that we've had somebody that has specialized in teen librarianship and done those things. And we have, over that same span of time, established relationships with the high school librarians, but then you get turnover and then you have to reestablish those relationships, and they've got different policies with regards to how they're kind of our in, but we have all kinds of service clubs that work up there. I know tonight we're having a mock city council meeting with the leadership class. So there's different opportunities for us there. And it may wax and wane over time, but I think that at this point we should work towards that.
okay.
I think we should, they're students, they're kids.
Yeah,
no matter
I
whether
don't know.
Senior or junior in high school.
It was really just
I
question
think
of
I think what
how much can the library
right, how much can the library do? The library we can do, and it might not be huge things in terms of big splashy initiatives,
Right.
but it's some of the smaller things that get back to our mission statement that make us part of the community, where we're doing, Dungeons and Dragons programs, or we're showing up at a volunteer fair so students know they can come and do community service hours for us. It's the connections might not be a big program or a big thing, but
yeah, that's
working towards that is good.
That's great.
The cost
Yeah.
wouldn't be that much on these programs, really.
Yeah,
It
no,
would both be staff,
Yeah.
would be the programs.
Yeah.
I get kind of, I think the teens have been really overlooked,
Yeah.
looking at the budget for every time I've been looking at the budget. I think we should do a lot more for them. If we reach out to them, and they seem to be coming now. And I just would like to even reach out to them more. It's the cost of having a program for the teens. It's not that much, it's staff.
right.
That's
Well,
the
it's
cost.
staff, but also it's with people in general. It's time of life. The library is, I've talked about this before, just like in Harry Potter, we're the room of requirement. We're there for you at all times of your life, and you may need to, your child coming in with your parent, and then you are a student coming in to do studying, and then you're in college and maybe you use the college library, but then you're working and you're cobbling together jobs and you don't go to the library as much, or maybe you use this online and you don't come back again until you have kids or something swings and you move to a new town. It's all of that. So you have to imagine too, especially as students get older, they get busy. They have classes, they have sports things, they're prepping for college. This is very time consuming. So we're there to support them when they need it and how they can use this.
Okay.
So that's.
So my question is more of a messaging question. You talked about Trustees, which is out in Carmel Valley.
It is.
Okay, so we called out Carmel, Big Sur, both part of Carmel Unified School District,
Mm-hmm.
but not Carmel Valley. That's probably been grouped into Carmel, but they view themselves as different. And many of the donors for the foundation are in Carmel Valley. So what we're saying is that you could be read that we're not worried about Carmel Valley. That's how this could be interpreted. I would just add Carmel Valley or
I see what you're saying.
Carmel
Okay.
Unified School District. Is Pebble Beach part of this Carmel? They have their own school district. They go to
I see.
High school.
I had been thinking, I understand. So if I had said Carmel Unified School District, it would have covered Carmel,
Everything.
Big Sur,
But there,
and Carmel Valley. But I understand regionally, yes, we should add Carmel Valley in so that it's stated clearly, because we do care about Carmel Valley.
As far as I know, is only the high school
right.
at
Stevenson.
Stevenson.
Right.
Stevenson's
There's
it.
no elementary school.
Yes, well, there's
Stevenson.
It's
different kids
it's
there.
Stevenson, and they come
How-
over and they've participated in Carmel events with community activities and with city council over the years, and I think it's important that
I would just add Carmel Valley. They're part of our patron base.
Yes, they
They're
are.
part of our foundation contribution base, and where we've called out one of the schools in their area, so I just add them.
Yes, I will do that. Thank you. Any other comments about this objective? All right. Next one, continue to learn from and build on established programs and explore new programs, ideas as they arise. And so this is one, we are always tweaking everything to make them better. Every time we try out a new program or we see something that isn't working, for instance, Baby and Me Yoga, we hear people want it. They want to have it, they love the idea of it, and they don't show up. So we have moved the day of the week over the last 2 years to try to get that audience. The next one we're going to try is Monday mornings. I'm hoping that everybody's schedule is clear starting Monday and we'll get it. So that's been an interesting one. And then of course, new program ideas. At the end of, after all the goals, we have all of that list of program ideas that I included just as we did, initial surveys as we were starting the strategic plan process from our patrons. We want to know what they want, just like we would with purchase suggestions. What is a need that's not being filled by Carmel Foundation or, one of our other great organizations here in town that they're looking to the library for support on. And I think we need to keep that at the forefront of our minds, and that's why that's codified here. Comments? Thoughts? Okay. So a next strategy is to broaden community impact by identifying community members' unique needs to shape library services and explore unmet needs in the community. First objective, provide a variety of ways for community members to provide feedback, bulletin boards, suggestion boxes, notebooks, and surveys. And by notebooks, I mean we have in the past just done informal surveys, kind of yes or no questions. Of course, we get explanations with yes or no questions where we just kind of keep a running notepad at the desk where we say, hey, would you like the library to be open super early in the morning or open late at night? And people love to tell us why they gave the answer that they gave. But we've gotten so much good information and feedback that way too. And having that notebook at the desk it also helps us keep track of trends that we didn't even think to ask questions about. Bulletin board is another way, and if you come in the library, you see when we're doing surveys, there's all kinds of ways for people to participate. We've even been using the gathering place, the glass walls. We found some static notes where people could write on those so everybody could see program suggestions. So we intend to continue doing that. And then of course, surveys are always very useful. Questions, thoughts about this? Next objective is conduct community conversations and produce an updated public knowledge report. Goes back to the Harwood Institute, the training that I had done right after I first became director, and this was a line of thinking in terms of being turned more outward towards the community and finding a balance between public knowledge, so what people know is happening in their community, what they're worried about in their neighborhood, and then staff's professional expertise, because those things are really essential for us to be able to do a good job. Though not necessarily centered on library. So it's not questions about, what can the library do better? What are the hopes for the library? It's community-wide, and it really gives you a good understanding of how we can center ourselves within the community, how we can provide information to the city council. There's often low-hanging fruit types of things that the library can take on or share with other groups as well for just getting things done. So I think it's time for us to do that. I should have caveated all of this. I did assign a date range for these. That's end of calendar year in my mind. So by the end of 2027, we'll have conducted that public knowledge report. And I tried to space all of these out. If you have questions or want them rearranged, we can do that as well as we go on. And then the third objective here is conduct surveys to help inform policy and procedure changes biannually. So we might be able to just, now that I'm looking at this, eliminate that and consider it covered by that first objective. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Do that. All right. And we still have a couple more items to get through on the agenda, so we can come back to this next. There's no time rush for us at this point on going through this. It's just everybody's time and attention, because it is, I feel like we could go on for probably another 2 hours going through each of these things. So stop me if you feel like there's a good breaking point if we get through maybe 2 of the goals, and then we can come back next month and pick it up again.
Okay.
All right, so moving on. So still the same goal, strategy 1.3, develop outreach programs to underserved communities. Something we had on our previous strategic plan was to better serve patrons with dementia and Alzheimer's and their caregivers through staff training, surveys, and collaborating on programs. This is important to us in that when we talk about, especially homebound services, sometimes people themselves aren't homebound. They're a caregiver for somebody that love, and they cannot leave the home because they're taking care of somebody that's got Alzheimer's or dementia. How can we support them from afar? What does that look like? What is Carmel Foundation doing for them? Is there some way we can work with them? But also to understand, too, when people come into the library who have issues with dementia, Alzheimer's, they're experiencing those things. What do those interactions look like for staff? Because sometimes it's confusing if it's somebody that you don't know. We've had a couple people over the last year who were visitors to town who had dementia, got separated from their human, but managed to come in the library so that we could sit them down, give them a snack and some water, and contact the non-emergency police line and reunite them with their people. So that's good. So how does staff recognize, those types of things so we can make sure that people are safe and provide that service to them? Any questions about that?
I was just going to say, one of the things we talked about was the foundation is delivering meals, and maybe we could include books with their meal delivery, right? Something like that. So I think
right, and
there's
that,
a lot of opportunity there.
Mm-hmm, and that comes down, I think, objective 1.3.3.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, and we did talk about that because
Yeah.
we had a representative from the foundation, their executive director participated in this process with us and mentioned that would be a possibility. So I wanted that included here as well because that's important. Next objective, start a conversation with the community workforce to understand their needs and wants. So the people that are here during the day, they don't live here, but they're a part of the community while they're here. We see them sitting in the lobby sometimes in the park branch, charging their phones in between shifts or taking a break outside on the benches in the garden or outside of the park branch. Are there unfulfilled needs there? How do we do outreach to them so that they know, hey, you can come inside the library. If you want to sit on the bench, that's fine, but you can, sit by the fireplace, pick up the paper, get a library card, check things out. While you're here in town, we consider you part of the community. Questions about that one? And we talked about with that as well, putting up signs at the bus stop, multilingual signs, for our workforce that Spanish speaking that comes into town, so they know who we are and that we welcome them as part of the library. The next objective we covered with the delivery to homebound patrons, and then work on developing an accommodation policy. So this is a policy for how we work on our services, and we've touched on this. I think we're thinking about it always. So when we talk about something like ebooks, for instance, those are different than print books in that they can help people who have dyslexia. There's different font sizes, so things can be very big, but also do we have people that are on the autism spectrum that are sensitive to lights? How do we make those types of accommodations? And thinking about, I know we have kids that use our library that are visually impaired, and we're seeing the Braille and Talking Book Library's budget has been all but eliminated. So is there things that we can do there But I think having a cohesive policy around that would be helpful for all of us to keep that in mind as we do our collection development in particular and think about how our spaces are oriented. Questions, thoughts? Okay, so on to the next strategy. Share the library's story through outreach in the community. Carryover, which is to rebrand the library so it's clear who we are, where we are, and what we do. We still have confusion around that. I don't know that that problem will ever be completely solved. But I think we're starting to make some headway with the way that we, at the very least, the Board of Trustees and the staff, talk about ourselves and the language that we use. So I want to continue on that path to, again, make it clear who we are, what we do, where we are, what our buildings are. Develop a plan and strategy for marketing and communication of library services, and that's our social media website, ads and columns in the Pine Cone. We have a fairly regular schedule for posting at this point. We do our newsletters bi-monthly and are very good at least at getting programs up 3 months in advance, but having something actually, and this is procedural for staff, written down for what we're doing, because there is an art to marketing and communications. And so if we need some outside help with building that type of plan or advice, I would welcome that. Questions about that? Next objective, conduct outreach to community leaders to ensure understanding of the value of the library and the importance of continued investment and support of library services. And this is for all of us. We are, again, subject matter experts. You guys are steeped in library, you know, but there are others out there that I can't count how many conversations I've had, and I'm sure you've had too, where you just kind of on the fly say, oh yeah, the library did XYZ. And, oh, the library can do that? You can do that at the library? Really? I thought libraries were just books, and they still have those. Continuing to, and this is something all libraries are talking about, we're not the greatest at advocating for ourselves and talking about ourselves. We just take it for granted that people know who we are and what we do and the value that we provide to our communities.
How do you define community leaders?
I think that it depends on who you are. So for me, when I hear community leaders and I think about this, the first thing that pops into my head is city council, because that's where I work and where I am. For others, it might not be that. It might be their other board of directors that they work with. It might be, or general heads of organizations here in town. It might be people that are just movers and shakers. So I think community leaders it is broad.
Right, I think the broader definition is probably better, because
it is.
Because otherwise, the people get to city council, you're always educating them. Where, if we'd reach out to the Carmel Cares and the Carmel, the other associations.
Right, you've got the Women's Club, you've got the Carmel-by-the-Sea Rotary. These are all leaders in our community, and they all have leaders within their groups. And I think the broadness is important.
Right, that way, there's a better understanding of what we do.
I'm always surprised at the number of people who don't realize that most of our funding doesn't come from the city. Most people think that our funding, all this funding, and just maintenance and salaries come from the city.
Yeah, that's a very important part of our messaging.
That's something that we need to emphasize. So I get a lot of that at the market.
Yeah.
People who say, but why are you selling books? We need the money.
Right. That's our operating budget.
Yes.
Did Alex?
Yes.
I'm just going to say that I know that CPLF would work with the library to have a consistent visibility like we did before in the Pine Cone or something like that, particularly with the capital campaign going on, but also kind of in between our asks for people to understand all the services that we already provide. I had conversations yesterday, and I said, oh, we do that already, or come into the library, this is something that's happening. So
Right.
So to your point, just to let the community know more about it, I'm sure be, willing and happy to. We'll probably put some of our own, information like we currently do consistently in the Pine Cone in particular, but also to help raise that visibility, it'd be good.
Yeah, and I think that at least because I follow both our library and the CPLF on my own personal social media, and I think both organizations do a good job right now. But there's always room for improvement, and there's always, you have to tailor things for your audience. Who's your audience, and what's going to resonate with them? And so I think we probably have some ways we can tweak things, but we do share things back and forth in terms of programs. But as Alex said, we can work on this, continue to work on this together.
Right, yeah. I think it's imperative.
Yes.
On Susan's point, we have such a turnaround with a lot of new people moving to town, and it's such a unique situation we have here. It's very unique that all our stuff is paid for by the community and not the city, which I think is probably not normal in the rest of the country. I think the city itself pays for the library, not the residents,
Yes.
which is very, very unique and fantastic, but it's hard for people to really get to understand.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're keeping that broad. Last two on this page. This has been on our strategic plan for quite a bit, and I think it showed up on the council's strategic plan as well. It also, when I was going back to review the last public knowledge report from 2019 that we did, work with local realtors to distribute a welcome packet, brochure, bookmark for new community members. This is something that people feel very strongly about across the board, whether it's library related or not. We're well poised to do that because, as we talked about earlier, one of the things people do when they come to town is they want to connect with the library. I did start the process pre-pandemic, and I think it got halted by the pandemic, of working with the planning and building department on every time property changes hands within the city limit to be able to do that kind of outreach. But starting with some of our local realtors, which I know we have connections with from CPLF board, at the very least I can think of at least two people where we can start that conversation locally, just so we let people know, not just the library. I think incorporating in other city functions as well would be a good cohesive way to do things.
Foundation's been working on this.
Yeah. Yes, let's work, please. Yes. Yeah, we started one, and I love the planning and building department, and they did a 2-page letter, no graphics or anything like that, that was like, welcome to town, here's all the things you can't do. So not quite that messaging, but maybe a nicer type of trifold brochure that says, welcome to the city, here's a page for your library, here's what your departments can do for you, we're happy you're here.
So since we brought up the collaboration between the foundational library on some of these, what strikes me as we go through here is it's very complete and very detailed. I don't know how you're going to execute it. When I go up and I say, what's the plan of action and milestone for these? Because they have different time endings and things like that. So if something ends in 2026, 2027, what tends to happen many times in organizations is they're great in doing the thought of what they want to do. They're absolutely horrible in execution.
Right.
Going through. And it comes up where, what is the plan to execute? What are your milestones? How do you know that you're on track? How do you know you're off track? Things like that. And that takes a lot of time and energy. And if for each of these, the person responsible ends up being you, this becomes unexecutable.
Right.
And it has to be delegated down. So as you go through, I think there needs to be some thought of, who in your staff gets tagged with this. How's the update given to the board of trustees as it goes through? And are there some, like the realtor, and there may be others, where the foundation can say, all right, we'll do the legwork for you.
Right.
And what you may find is it's not a 2027, it's by the end of 2025. But the foundation may have the ability for some of these, where appropriate,
to move faster, yes.
To move faster, and also they may have volunteers that are willing to help to do things. I mean, you have and they have all their donors. So as we go through, this is very well thought out. It's very detailed. I don't know how we execute it or how you execute it.
Yes.
And then I guess we're responsible as the board of trustees. And so how are we going to make this executional?
So I have a plan for that. I have a
Do you have
spreadsheet.
milestones with it?
Do I what?
The plan to do the
The
exercise?
plan to do the plan, yes. I have a plan to do the plan. I'm like Elizabeth Warren of plans. I got all the plans. So I do have a plan. I actually have a model from another strategic planning organization. Actually, Katie's mom found it because she had worked on helping them do their strategic plan, by which I can assign certain. I've already been planning for which staff members. I know that this is their strength. They've worked on this in the past. They're going to be able to get it across the goal line, within whatever time frame we set, and we'll have a tracking method for that.
Okay.
So that piece of it, I'm not worried about. Are we going to? Have I ever seen a strategic plan get done 100%? No, I don't think that's ever going to happen in the real world. But I do have a mechanism to keep track of these things. And traditionally, in the past, pandemic disruptions notwithstanding, tried to do 6-month check-in with this board. When I had a community activities strategic plan, we did the same thing. So I intend to keep up that practice.
I just go back to for a 7,000 person organization, we have 5 objectives. Each one of those has 5 sub-objectives, and that's what the director uses to run the whole thing. Actually, no, he only has less than 5 for each. So the strategic plan for the next 5 years for a $2 billion, 7,000, is much simpler than what you have here.
It is. That sounds very much simpler. And again, I did try to rein myself in terms of presenting this, and the committee was helpful in that as well. And I did have staff participate in that process. And some of this is services that we're building off of that we already provide. So it's not like we're building something from the ground up, but also being responsive to the community in real time. We're going to keep doing that. So I wouldn't have presented something that I felt was just a pie in the sky, look at this pretty plan type of thing. I feel like we can really make headway on accomplishing these things. And again, some of these are carryovers from the previous time because they're in progress, or we feel they're important, and now we have the expertise or the bandwidth to do them.
Okay.
So I think we're...
That's my caution.
Yes, it is a good question, and I do. When we get further through all of these goals and objectives, my plan is to bring my big spreadsheet to all of you for the time frame and how this is assigned, because I think it will be helpful for you to see that as we go through. So, yes?
It's fine.
Okay, now we're just after 10. We've got a couple more items. Do we want to tackle another goal today, or do we want to continue the work?
I'm okay. Everybody else okay?
I mean, we could talk all day if we want, but I want to be.
We have other agenda items, though, right? You said.
We have other agenda items, and I want to be cognizant of people's time.
Well, on 5, on the next one, on
The budget?
on 8, that's going to be moved probably to the 14th. We'll talk about the.
Well, I think we're going to continue that discussion from.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my
Okay.
question for you. So
Yes.
when do you want to have your plan approved?
I would like to have it approved by the end of the fiscal year, so we have it in line with the budget.
Right, and so the board may transition to different members after the next meeting
Potentially new members could be appointed in June.
in June. So you may end up doing this twice.
I may end up doing this twice.
Okay, as long as you're okay with that.
I recognize it's a weird timing for both this and the budget,
Okay.
but it is what it is. So continue on.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So let's go through one more goal and then we'll shift over to item number 8. Yes? Okay. Goal 2, innovate and support equitable and inclusive access. For strategy is improve and enhance library buildings to ensure their best
Can
design.
you advance?
Pardon me?
Can you advance?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So improve and enhance the library buildings to ensure they are best designed for your use and are welcoming and vibrant. And so objective 2.1 this is a carryover but updated. Look for opportunities to renovate both buildings and ensure that the community has an opportunity to participate in and provide input at every phase of the design process for both Harrison Memorial Library and Park Branch, if those projects continue on. And I did include Park Branch in there just because you never know what is possible as we move forward. And so, we've got fundraising ongoing for Harrison Memorial Library. which is really exciting. And so we just want to make sure that, all voices are heard as part of that process. And I know that our architect has that built into the way that they do their design process, but we've got our meetings here. And
if his process is adequate, will that satisfy your objective?
yes,
Okay.
it will.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then also of great import is the next objective: ensure continuity of operations during any renovation project by relocating and prioritizing services and collections based on community needs and desires. And as we heard earlier in this meeting, that is underway with our ad hoc committee for the Harrison Memorial Library project. It's going to be really key for the continued support of renovation, that especially with the pandemic wounds being still raw and the closure of the library being so close to us, that we have a plan in place to continue operations, that we're closed for a minimal amount of time when we're shifting books from one place to another. And this is definitely doable with the help of the ad hoc committee and with the brainstorming of staff to do that, and critical to our project success. Questions, thoughts? Next strategy: improve cohesion between the library buildings and their surrounding gardens and green spaces that are by their nature extensions of the library. This first objective: introduce patrons and visitors to the library in the Harrison Library Garden with improved signage, explore the possibilities of a garden information booth. This was something that came up during our strategic planning session. I think it's a great idea, and this is kind of one of those passive types of things. We have a garden map in the library that the garden club provides to us. We get so many questions from visitors, from all kinds of people that come in and say, what kind of flower is that? I want that kind of plant. What is that? So we've got our little map. But if we could put, like you see those little green signs, the small unobtrusive ones in botanical gardens, put something like that in our garden with the help of the garden club, work with them on programs, and that leads into the next objective: conduct nature-centric programs. We've already dabbled in that a little bit at the Harrison with nature journaling. That's been a very popular program for us, for people to go out and sit, sketch, think, but to continue that type of thing. It's a little more challenging over at the Park Branch because we're surrounded by a parking lot. We have done, and with a big help of Carmel Cares, really improved the green space all the way around the building. But also we've got a park right across the street. So what kind of programming can we do there? We'll probably have some story time or summer reading programs over there. But just being aware of how fortunate we are to have these green spaces and have the support of the garden club. Any questions about those? And again, that, staff led, but in partnership with community organizations that can support us. Okay, so shifting on. Kept this one in here: align the days and hours of service with community needs. One big objective here, and that's restoring Saturday hours. I've not given up on this. It's still underway. I have one full-time vacancy to fill, and then we're working on some union negotiations. So I want this in here. It should stay in here. I want the community to know that this is not something that we have forgotten about, and that it's something we're still actively working towards. It has taken a long time, but we're going to get there. Next strategy: invest in adaptive technologies based on patron needs. So continue to invest in our Wonder Book collection and start to look at a Braille collection. And I would like to include in there and amend this to include our large print collection as well. We're seeing more use with our large print collection the last few years, and so I want to continue to expand that collection. In addition, any questions about either one of those strategies' objectives? No. All right. That brings us on to goal 3. Stop here or keep going? How's everybody's energy?
I think keep going.
Keep going?
Don't look like there.
All right.
Yeah, that's
Nope.
fine.
Okay. All right. Goal 3, maintain operational excellence. Like the last 2 goals, these are carryover goals that we're building off of from the last strategic plan. First strategy is to optimize public resources. First objective, review, reaffirm, and amend library policies to ensure maximum transparency and efficiency. We're currently in the process of doing that right now. I think I mentioned previously we talked about having an accessibility policy, so I think we're going to have some more policies that come up for us next year that we'll want to add into our current slate of policies. Work with Pacific Grove and Monterey libraries to implement DVD and book sharing. That's been a very slow process, but we're going to get there. Work with the Carmel Public Library Foundation and Friends of the Library to identify projects that could provide opportunities for special donor funding. And these come up from time to time. Gathering Place is a great example of, a project that came up out of special donor funding. And so we want to continue to be open to that type of special project. I know that we have the renovation of the Harrison coming up, but if there's some opportunity at the Park Branch or something that's garden related, for instance, or a bike mobile type of thing, we want to be nimble and responsive. Better.
So just on the objective 3.1.3, when you did the shelving in the Park Branch, there were other people involved. It was the Rotary.
That was funded by the Rotary.
So you might want to reach out to the different Rotary clubs or other, depending on what the project is. Fundamentally, most of the funding does come from
right,
the Library Foundation, but if there's elbow grease or others, then there are other organizations in the community that can provide the elbow grease to reduce costs.
Okay, then I'll add in and other community organizations.
Let us work together because we have bigger asks sometimes or different asks.
Right. So, for instance, the Rotary.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the Rotary funds in that instance actually did come from the foundation. So the foundation had made an ask, and so while they were funds contributed by the Rotary, they came through the foundation. So we do keep them in the loop on those types of things. So, but I still want to add, so it'll be Carmel Public Library Foundation, Friends of the Library, and other community organizations.
Yeah, just realizing that the foundation is kind of key. But my assumption is we'd always be working with them anyway. So
exactly.
Help guide us.
Thank you, Phil. Last objective there, better promote purchase suggestions on the library website and our bookmarks and other promotional materials. I'm always surprised that people don't know about that they can ask for a book. You can ask if we don't have it or you think we need a copy of something different. It's a great way to ensure that we have a well-rounded collection that reflects our community's interests. Next strategy, staff feel empowered to provide exceptional service. So develop a staff training plan. So one all staff training per month. And that it would include our emergency preparedness initiatives. Usually those are October, but to incorporate into our regular work plan, we usually do our staff meetings Thursday mornings, that we do one all staff a month, whether we're touching on, de-escalation tactics, cataloging types of things, but that it's helpful when we're all in the same room together to have robust discussion. And then next objective, map the library's volunteer needs and map the needs of our volunteers. So what is something that we need supplemented in the library where it's a special project in the local history department, but also conversely, is it a teen who needs community service hours? So who is in our community? What are they looking for from the library when they want to volunteer, and what can we provide them? Because it goes both ways. Oh, and on to goal 4.
Sure.
Since we're on such a tear. Okay. Improve the library's environmental sustainability and resilience. This isn't the right version. I took out the last bit of language there.
So which language did you take out?
To climate change. I took that out.
Okay.
Strategy 1, improve environmental sustainability of library operations. So investigate ways to reduce waste in library operations, whether that's, our paper. We have our public works department. So this is kind of a straddling goal where we have support in other departments. Public works, our sustainability managers looking at, recycle, how much is the paper is our recycled content? How do we keep track of all of that things? Being cognizant of that when we buy craft supplies, encouraging people to bring their own water bottles to programs instead of handing out little water bottles, but making that more routine in our processes and our programs. Look for opportunities to switch to local, sustainable, certified. Be companies and vendors when possible. So who are we working with for getting all of our supplies? And then last objective there, work with Public Works to identify opportunities to reduce energy consumption in library buildings. Is there room? We did some lighting upgrades throughout both buildings 5 or 6 years ago so that they were energy efficient, but making sure that that's still working. Window replacements, particularly in the park branch because the windows have aged out. But continuing to think about these things, programming our heaters and, Park Branch has air conditioning, but being aware we've got this system running, but we opened the windows. But there's always room for us to improvement and do energy saving tactics. And, for some of the Harrison Library in particular, it can be challenging because it's such a huge building and the ceilings are so high, but wherever we can, look for ways to reduce our energy consumption.
I think that must be the Park Branch, because when you have the renovation of the Harrison, all the new energy developments we put into that. So I think the Park Branch should be the number one on that.
Right. And with that though, for when they're doing the remodel of the Harrison,
Yeah.
that tell them you want to try to go to people bringing their own water bottle. That would probably prompt the architect to design in those water bottle stations that you see all
Exactly.
over the place. So, that's kind of important. And then, the Park Branch is its own challenge.
The Park Branch should be more like windows and lighting, better,
makes sense.
more energy efficient in that aspect.
Yeah.
That's what would be the more doing to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is something, yes, to keep in our brains as we go through the renovation piece of things, but also where we can make improvements, in particular at the Park Branch Library. Next strategy, increase the library's preparedness for emergencies. So the first one there is develop a continuity of operations plan for the library. So we have a plan on what to do if an emergency happens, how to respond to it, how to shut things off, how to turn things on, how to do salvage for books. We have supplies. We do walkthroughs with staff every year. We do them with the fire department. But we don't have a continuity of operations plan. So what happens if an earthquake happens and we've salvaged everything? Now what? How are we operating the library from there? Where are we operating? And it goes back to that pandemic kind of thinking. We didn't have I don't know that any library out there had a continuing operations plan that probably considered a pandemic, but that will be helpful for us to take the knowledge that we have. We saved every single procedure every time we changed something during the pandemic so that we would have it on hand so we could use it and not have to reinvent the wheel every time. So I think that continuity, and it will help us as well with relocating library services during a renovation. This is something we can build on and continue on going forward.
Your contingency operations plan should also include how you build back up on the other side, because as we went through that,
right,
everybody was so focused on we'll never ever open this again that very few people were focused on the fact that you need to keep you couldn't eat your seed corn. You had to keep the ability to reconstitute on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And there was resistance from some of the trustees at that time to think about that. It was a doomsday thing, and they were worst case, not thinking about how we built it back on the other side.
Right.
And fortunately, you were able to mitigate that through your
Yes.
actions and decisions, and we were able to come out on the other side. But left to the Board of Trustees, the result probably would not have been as good.
It would have been a little bit different, I think. But yes, I
As the Board
agree.
of Trustees, once you get your continuity of operations, explain it to the Board of Trustees so they know, because that will
Oh,
say,
absolutely. Here's how we
Yeah.
continue operations and, these variety of contingencies and what will be important for us, as you say, to
right.
build
As the
back.
president, I have some of the scars from those conversations.
I can tell.
That was interesting times. We'll leave it at that.
It was just stunning.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this too shall pass, but it was stunning.
Mm.
Yeah. Next objective, create a special collections evacuation plan to improve the safety of our local history collections in case of an emergency. This kind of thing is, I've considered, as we move shelving and things around, making use of the basement. For instance, this is a scary example, but if there's a fire and we know the fire's coming, we can shift everything into the basement, which is fireproof doors, and we know it will be relatively safe down there. Even making connections with our...
This is the Park Branch, right?
Park Branch.
Yeah.
It's
So
Park Branch.
not the current,
Not the Harrison.
not the current Harrison.
Not the current Harrison. So when I talk about special collections, I'm talking about the local history department.
So you're not worried about it's a specific thing, so we don't need to design a fireproof basement into the...
We don't. So I'm talking about, this kind of goes
Okay.
hand in hand with the, continuing operations plan, where we've never considered as part of our emergency planning, if we have time, can we relocate that collection somewhere else? Or conversely, if there is some sort of fire incident, best practices say, when you have wet books, wet materials, getting them to deep freeze. So, hey, local restaurateurs, you have power. Can we use your freezer to save some of our local history collections? Where are our resources there? So it's something that we have discussed as library staff, but haven't gone so far as to identify.
Which is community outreach.
Right, it is. So, so really starting to talk about local history. And we have a special sprinkler system in that department. I mean, and the climate control vault. But it's always good to have backup plans because those files are so important to documenting our history.
Those files are very, very, our history. I've been reading them, and they're very, very interesting. Can't afford to lose them.
And that
That's
could
our
be,
history.
yeah.
So there's some fire suppression systems that don't involve water.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something in the future to look at, upgrades to the Park Branch to include one of those systems?
Yes.
It would probably require that a more airtight system there, because you want to keep some chemicals in there, but don't.
Yes.
Put
Yeah, that would be a possibility
put a
for
steel
exploration
door
in the
on
future.
Right now.
We have, I can't remember, I wish I could remember the type of it, or wish Katie was here to remind me. It's not like the sprinkler systems that you see through the rest of the buildings, either in Harrison or that, where it's just spraying water on there. It's a special chemical compound. It's not powder, but it's different than the other ones. And it was retrofitted back in 2008 with special funding from the foundation, actually, to maintain that. And those pipes are flushed annually with Sentry. They just tested them. So, but I think that the 2008, that system is probably due for an upgrade at some point. Yeah. Look at that. But yes. Any other questions about special collections and?
Well, this needs a metal door.
Yes.
To make it fireproof. That's what
yeah,
it
the
needs
vault
next.
door is wood and glass.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to
Put a metal door
change
in
that door out. It's nice to be able to peek in there and see if Katie's just grabbing a box, but to improve fire safety in that department in particular, a fire safe door. And that's something we could incorporate into equipment purchases or put in request with the city as part of either building maintenance in terms of replacement types of things, or if it rises to I don't know that it would rise to the level of capital improvement request.
Right.
Yeah, it might.
Probably expensive, yeah.
They are.
That is Carmel's history.
It is Carmel's history. It is. Prioritize staff training on disaster recovery topics, such as we just talked about, salvaging water damage materials, and that's, if we have an incident, I think about all the different kinds of scenarios. A branch comes through the reading room window at the Harrison and our books get wet because it's a terrible storm. How are we hanging the books out to dry, so the staff have an awareness? And we have that included in our emergency response plan, but we don't usually touch on it in depth. We're more focused on, understanding where things are in the building, and how to keep people safe. It comes afterwards.
Would it be interesting to plan like 1 or 2 days during the year just to run a drill?
Yeah.
Or just close it down during the workday to run a drill?
Yeah,
Plan or something.
that would be ideal, I think, during car week, because the library is generally quiet during that time in terms of library use. We used to do that in the past with all staff trainings where
Right,
we'd
and then you
do
just
one or
walk
two.
them through, everybody has to walk through
Right.
what to do. You don't actually have to do it, obviously.
No, and we did, I know both Katie and I have been through all day things where they actually have, tables out where they've soaked books in water, and here's what it looks like, and here's how they swell up, and you have your examples, and here's how you triage them. And it's interesting. And unless you are specializing in archives in particular, you usually don't get that training. And so it would be good for the rest of the staff to have an understanding
Yeah.
what that looks like.
Great.
And they'd feel empowered to provide exceptional service.
There you go. All right. Last one. Next strategy, provide the community with resources and programs on environmental sustainability and resilience. So regularly host sustainability and resilience related programs that are relevant to Carmel and responsive to our community's concerns and interests. We haven't necessarily gone down this road, but this was something that came up during our surveys where people were asking, hey, can we have a program on building like emergency preparedness, and especially with the fires in Los Angeles, and we included this book. This was included before the fires in Los Angeles, that request, a couple of them, to help people feel safer and better prepared. And it ties in very nicely with the next objective, which is providing opportunities for our local and regional organizations such as CERT or CAL FIRE, Carmel Prepares, a platform and a space to provide that information and to work with them on doing that, and other city departments as well. Questions about that?
That's great.
Is it up to the library to do that, or, for instance, there was a certain all-purpose kind of thing at Sunset?
Yeah, Carmel Prepares. So I worked with them and with CERT and the police department to organize that, so that there's 2 annual meetings, one before fire season and one before storm season, to update people on what regional organizations are doing to prepare, but also what people can do to prepare. And I think for some of these, having smaller programs in the gathering place, helps people follow up on, because it's such a big room. There was a big one over in Monterey as well, Leslie and I went to, and there were hundreds of people there. But I think repetition with emergency planning and thinking about it, every time you go to one of these, you add one more thing to your emergency bag, and it just gets better and better, and it's good reminders for everybody.
Because I know CAL FIRE comes to the woods every year and does a presentation.
Right, and having...
So I'm wondering, and we've got so many other things that the library does do we need to do this?
We don't need to do it, but I think because it's nice to do it, and because we had the request from our patrons. We just had the latest fire map come out with the updated fire zones that has everybody on edge. So one of the things that I've had in my mind is, somebody at my house is not in one of the high zones, but something that my neighbor and I have been talking about is just defensible space. So putting metal flashing around your fences that's right up against your house. And I think when I've been in the Carmel Prepares meetings, having the high-level view of preparedness from CAL FIRE or Public Works is great and helpful, but people want to know what they can do, so getting into the nitty-gritty and having, like the expert that we listened to at the Monterey Prepares meeting come and talk specifically about defensible space, and maybe having the garden club come too and say, hey, these are the plants you want to do. But I think keeping this in here and providing opportunity for that. So it's not all on library staff. We can call them up and say, hey, can you come do a presentation for us on that? We're making the gathering place available for you. It's not us doing the presentation. It's working with our organizations to invite them in to help better meet community needs and provide information. All right, last one. Strategy 4.4, increase the library's resilience during emergencies. So we want to continue to act as a charging and warming center during storms and power outages, working with the VIPs. So far, we haven't had a chance, thank goodness, to test out the backup generator in terms of keeping the electricity on in the park branch since they upgraded the switches. But I'm hopeful that we'll be able to keep most of the lights on. And then to explore additional ways we can support our community during emergencies and extreme weather events, whether that's, improving our communications during that time. I'm not quite sure what that looks like yet, but I love to explore things, and how we do our better communication. Thoughts about this last one?
I think it's fine. Are you looking for ideas, or you just think if this is a good thing?
No, not necessarily. I mean,
yes.
we can add, any
idea.
ideas you have, we can add them right to this list here, which is terrible up on the screen, but between the library staff, and these are all of the mostly program ideas that came out of the two boards that we had up in the kids department and at the Harrison Memorial Library. Some of them are very funny. Some of them were definitely like making a roller coaster for gnomes. Seems far-fetched, but actually on the side of the building where the local history department is, and there's the big redwood tree, that would be an ideal place for a tiny little gnome amusement park in a little village. You see the fairy gardens all over town in the trees. Why not?
They're so cute.
Why not by our redwood tree? Okay, so let's stop there. I think next steps would be to update this with the feedback you've given me today, and then I would like to share it out with the community in its draft form, like the CRA, having it posted on their website, posting it on our website, putting it in the Friday letter for further community feedback. Thoughts about that?
Sounds good.
Sounds great.
And then come back next.
And then come back. Mm-hmm.
Next time with any recommendations they have or anything like that.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you all very much.
Thank
Maybe
you.
try to approve it next meeting, or?
I would love to try to approve it at the end of May meeting, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can do it if I have enough before the special meeting, we can take a pass at it then if needed, but end of May.
I think it would be best to try to approve it May meeting,
I agree.
end of May.
All right.
You did a lot of work.
Yeah, we did. It was great. It was a great process.
All right, let's move on to item number 8. Consider federal and state budget cut impacts on the library for the 2025-2026 budget and provide staff with direction. I think that's going to take a whole new meeting, I think, on the 14th, and we can really dig into that.
So is there any flexibility on the date? Because I will not be here on the 14th. Any possibility for the 7th?
Absolutely. I just picked a Wednesday.
Okay. I don't know if that works for everyone else. I just know I'm going to be out of the country, actually.
7th works for me. Does that work for you, Alex?
I'm sorry?
May 7th?
May 7th? All right.
Yeah, I would hate to miss it.
Okay, we can move it to the 7th then.
Well, I think we should go through what we have to. I don't have every single bit of information, but I think with this item, we can at least start a discussion. It will help me to fill in some of the blanks
Okay,
with the budget.
that sounds good.
So at our last meeting, we kind of took a quick brush pass at what's going on at the state and the federal level, and you all requested that I come back with some more information, especially with regards to usage of each of the things that I talked about for their potential cuts. In some instances, I was able to do that, and others I was not. So for our, with the Institute for Museum and Library Services their funding being cut, which is a trickle down to the state library, and then our California Library and Services Act funding, we're looking at cuts to Parks Pass program, which is set to sunset December of 2025. So we'll have it through then, and then after that, Parks Passes will no longer be funded. Flipster, which has been provided to the smallest of the 8 libraries in the Pacific Library Partnership Consortium, of which we are one, for free over the last few years. Access to the New York Times, I do not have information on at this point in terms of our usage statistics or what funding a subscription would look like for us individually or collectively in the state if libraries were to take that on. It should be, the last update I had last week was that it would be forthcoming. All of those things would be forthcoming at some point in May. So we may, on some of these, need to make a decision about the budget and come back in September and October, as President Krischer said, to reevaluate.
And actually,
yes,
and that's
please.
for the online?
That's for the
version?
online version that, it looks like all of the other, if you actually pay for and subscribe to the New York Times. We still do, through our databases, have access to New York Times articles. It's just not the same as reading the newspaper online like that.
And we still have the print in the library.
We still have the print in the library. We still have our print
Just
newspapers.
to clarify, it's
Yeah.
not clear,
Yes.
but yeah, thank you.
Access to the Call Academy for staff training and support. I'm not sure if that will continue to be available to all of us for free. You have to be a library staff member, work for a library in order to be able to access it for free. I don't know if that will be behind a paywall or if it will continue to be available for free and they won't add to it. I'm not quite sure where they'll land yet. And then cooperative ebook purchasing for the Palaces project and Overdrive. With Palaces in particular, Overdrive is safe from budget cuts for the state because it's a for-profit company. Palaces is not. That's an initiative that was funded by the state through IMLS. And so I did participate last week in an ebook summit. It was an all-day summit, and I need to go back and watch some of the sessions again. But it's unclear if Palaces will also go behind a subscription paywall, kind of like Overdrive, where you pay a sum for participation each year, and then you continue to purchase books. So let's go through with the Parks Pass program. Right now we participated for 3 years. We have 39 passes in circulation at any given time. Sometimes they get lost. The state will replace them at no cost to us when that happens. They circulate, as you would expect, seasonally. So we start seeing an uptick in the springtime. We've gotten to the point where there is a holds list going during the summer, and then it dies off as you get into the winter time. We could potentially fund, and we've, in this fiscal year, so far, Parks Passes have circulated, and this is 300 times to date. Last year it was 349 times. That's approximately, I think I costed it out, it was $25 per checkout, which is significantly less than annual States Pass. It's a wonderful program, and I love that libraries partnered with the Parks Department. And we kind of touched on this discussion or on this point at the last meeting, is it an essential library service, and do we want to keep funding it if the state funding goes away? If we were to maintain the 39 passes and we did an annual Golden Poppy pass, and there's different tiers, but I looked at the just easiest online pass for state parks that are inclusive of the parks that are in our area here, that would be about $5,000 a year, and you'd have to think about replacing those if they got lost. Alternately, we could consider maintaining the program, but at a lower rate, and not keeping 39 passes, but having 5 to 10 passes, understanding that they're most used seasonally. So keep those going, and it potentially makes it easier in terms of building back an audience if the state funding, when the Parks Passes go away, December 2025, 3 years later they come back again, we still have our regular users built in for our 5 or 10 passes, and it's not re-educating the community over again that this is available for us. So I'll leave that to the board for discussion and direction with regards to park passes. So just let it sunset in December and we won't have parks passes any longer, or consider building some funds into the budget to maintain some number of parks passes, whether I put in there as a ballpark 5 to 10, and continuing that service for our community.
So this is really a two-step, could be considered two-step. One is that you're trying to make the budget for the whole year.
I am.
And so but the money may or may not be there in December for the next year. So you're wanting to know how much money you should put in there, but this is really, the final decision is going to be made in the November or October meeting.
The parks passes, no, those will definitely sunset in December.
So
There's no wiggle room on that. There's no changing that. That was actually decided last fiscal year. The state decided that. So that we were the libraries are always hopeful that funding would be restored, but with the downturn in the state's budget and further federal cuts, it's definitely not coming back. So what I'm looking to the board for is, yes, it sunsets in December. Would you like to continue the program at a nominal pace? And if so, I know I need to budget for 6 months of passes for next fiscal year at whatever rate, because we're doing 5 of them or 10 of them. And we can revisit this next. We can say, nope, we're just going to leave this alone for now and come back to it in September or October. But for planning purposes, it's helpful for me to know that we're going to be continuing this. I continue to, the staff know that we're going to be handing these out, because there's all these processes that go on in the background for keeping these things going and replacements. So that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, a kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down. Well, there's the middle thumb where it's middle, but.
My point is, it's $5,000. Where do we get the most bang? That $5,000, where else do more people use it? Is it to go some other service that we're thinking about cutting, that maybe instead of 4 times as many people use it, and it's much more fiscally responsible than this?
I'm thinking not exactly the same way, but it's hard to make a decision on this one in a vacuum, right? So if it's $5,000, but what else are we thinking of adding? So is the cumulative total to the budget going to be 20,000 or 7? And I know we don't know this right now, but maybe that's what we need to do in May, is to really look at it as a. And give you a direction, which I guess I would say I hate to cut it completely. Whether we have the $5,000 to spend, I don't know that yet. It's
so funny you say that. I had originally, and I tortured Leslie with this all last week, I had originally written this staff report. It was like 10 pages long, with the budget proposal in there, but because this piece of it is so complicated, I ended up bifurcating it and thinking, if I could get some direction here, I could come up with maybe 2 versions of the budget where things were included and 1 where they weren't, and what those impacts would be. So we can definitely, continue on. I can get a sense of what you are thinking, but continue this discussion to the next meeting with all of those things. It felt chicken and egg to me, where it's like, if this, then that. Right.
So the way I look at it is, if we have this because we had the money, so we provide the passes. If it were coming to the Board of Trustees today, where do you want to allocate new money for the Park Pass program, would you do it? Is it an essential library service? Right. And in my mind, this is not an essential library service. This helps the California state parks. You could say it does help some of our patrons because it allows them to go to the parks, but is this the only avenue they have to get discounted tickets or to get things or something like that? And then it may be below the cut line where, you have so much money and you have these things on the list, and you go down and you run out of money and it's just way down the cut line list where it just doesn't get funded.
So and maybe this will be helpful. So for our budget over since I've been director, we haven't done huge changes. We've recalibrated, in particular with hard copy ordering and online spending. Every year we look at those. And databases are pretty steady. The ones we use, we check those usage stats. We've dropped some over the years, and we've added some and dropped those. The place in the budget where we have the most latitude is equipment purchases, because those are usually one-time purchases. They're not annual subscriptions. They're not part of the ongoing services. We need new shelves here, or we need a new office chair because our chair's broke, type of thing. And so when we have these conversations, that's what I am imagining, how the budget will recalibrate itself. Is that funding there? Do we need equipment for next year? Right now, we're doing pretty well, and I don't think so. So some of these things we may be able to fit there. But the budget that I have drafted out doesn't propose any cuts to hard copy ordering or online spending at this point in time. But equipment is that's where we are a little bit more creative with our projects. And programs, that one's also pretty much status quo. Little tick up there for increases in costs for supplies, but...
Right, but it still takes library staff time to administer the program.
It does.
And so it's not only a service to the community, it's a time that person isn't helping somebody else get the Libby
Yes.
running.
Yes.
Or doing something else is this an essential service or not? For the library, does it bring patrons in that rent books?
Or to use other library services, right, exactly.
Other library services. So if it's the Costco loss leader, then okay. You do it because it brings patrons in to actually use your facilities the way you want them to use it. If it doesn't, whether it's $5,000 or $5, it's not essential.
Yeah,
Probably shouldn't be doing it.
we probably wouldn't vote it in now. Looking at our budget, if it came to us now, we'd probably say, no, it's a good idea, but we really can't afford it right now.
I provide this background because you're saying you're looking at it as you're doing the rest of the budget.
Yeah.
That's how I'd be looking at it. Is it essential? It doesn't matter the dollar cost. Is it essential? Should we expending the staff resources to administer this project, or do you want them doing something else? And then there's also the cost aspect, because none of this is really that expensive.
No.
And we could probably just make it all work, but it's fundamentally, who do we want to be? We have a strategic plan, empower the staff, get them focused on what they want to do, and then provide excellence in that area and not worry about other things.
Are parks open still?
Yeah, that's another thing, is where our parks, if we have passes, where are people going?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
I agree it's not essential. I do think that's true.
I agree with
It's
Phil.
tough.
But I also do think it may be I don't know, but it brings people in who may not otherwise come into the library.
Yes.
So could we continue it at a lower level? Maybe, I don't know.
That's
But-
fine. I just throw it out there. It's
Yeah,
just-
but I think we agree,
good
probably,
discussion.
it's not essential. And if we had to cut something, it's
Well-
probably on the list to be cut.
Why
but-
don't we move forward with
Yeah.
looking at the 10, the $1,200, the one, the 10, using 10 passes would cost us $1,250. We just let that lay.
Right.
And then move on and see where we look further on.
I think we should
So-
cut it,
So,
because I think that people would probably go to the state parks and the other, whatever the paths are for anyway, even if we didn't provide the passes. And I don't think like Phil said, it's not an essential
No.
library function.
And so they're, anyway.
It's tough, they're very tough decisions
Yeah.
that we're gonna have, we're put in a position.
Right, it's essentially, it's a discussion for the future. That's just
Yes, I think,
essential or not, and it can be, does it bring people in or not? And
Yeah,
it's-
that we don't know.
is it worth, does it bring enough, the $1,200?
Yeah.
Even that, is it worth the,
No.
Well, in our budget, whether it's $5,000 or $1,200, we could just say, okay, we'll just make it work.
yeah.
And we would just be able to absorb it, so there's not much, but, this is a principal thing. Is it essential?
No.
Does it bring people in? Should we be doing it?
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's no, maybe, maybe.
Yeah.
Right, right. You know, I mean, I think it's an open discussion,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's not the cost.
Yeah,
Right.
I
No.
like
It's the
that.
principle.
Yes, I
Yeah,
agree.
this is, our board is put in a very difficult position, I think, right now with everything going on.
Well, I would say with this, we are, to your point earlier, Phil, in terms of staff time to administer the program, at this point in time, if we were starting this from scratch right now, that would be one thing. And it not being an essential library services. But because we have the infrastructure in place already, continuing it on rather than kill it and then bring it back later, that's more of a disruption to.
Oh, I'm not thinking bring it back later.
Well, I mean, no. What I mean by that is
Part of it.
if state funding is restored and the program resumes
There you go.
optimistically, that's what I mean in terms of bringing it back. So,
That could be,
But the state canceled this before
budget.
the economy just, I mean, so this was a state decision
this was a state decision.
before they started getting all the cuts.
Yeah.
So I'm going, well, if this is a state discussion, the state decided to do this before they even started getting the cuts coming out of Washington. I'm not seeing this come back anytime soon.
yeah, I think you have
At this
a point
point.
there.
Because that was an independent
Yeah,
decision.
that was
Right.
decided before all this.
Be interesting to know what the rationale was, but we don't know
I
that.
don't know. All right.
Okay. So do we want to, so in light of what we've had in terms of this first item in the staff report, do we want to continue this
Sure.
item to the next meeting? And I can bring back a combined staff report with all of these with budget impacts? Would that be more useful than going through each section?
No, I think we should go through some of the sections so we can talk it over before,
Yeah.
I think,
give you
you know,
some direction.
Right, I mean, some of these, you've done
Yeah.
you've
You've
kind of
done-
gone through it.
Yeah, in some instances, I made recommendations to the
Right.
board,
Yeah,
just
we're-
cut it, and then,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think you should have some input from us before our next meeting, that you could go with staff and come back with some answers.
Yeah.
the budget.
This is, the time doesn't bother me, because
No,
this
fine.
is very important to all of us, so
Mhm.
let's just get it done and make the right decisions to everything.
Now, has everybody had a chance to read these ahead of time?
Yes, yes.
All right, so I mean, then the question is that maybe we can just very briefly go through the discussion,
Right.
get down to the recommendation and just,
Cut it
Do we
down.
know who's using the program, who's getting the passes?
I don't have a breakdown of that, like a
That's a possibility.
zip code type
also,
of thing,
we
but you
should
can
know.
see there, in the scheme of things, the parks passes don't circulate as
No,
highly as other parts of our collection. We have parts of our collection that are niche, and we'll talk about that as we go into Flipster. We have hardcore Flipster users, but, baseline, Flipster has exclusive access to a handful of magazines that other providers, online magazine providers, can't get their hands on. People magazine being one of them, and that's heavily used as along with like the Atlantic. But we have print copies of those in-house. For 23 magazines, we're looking at close to $6,000 a year when we have access to newsstand through Libby for $2,000 per year, and that's thousands of magazines. It just does not cost out to me. And in fact, yesterday I just got PLP found some funds to help subsidize that, but it would still be just over $3,000 for us for Flipster for next fiscal year before funding really is completely eliminated, and that still doesn't math out to me. So I would recommend eliminating Flipster. We've got plenty of access to all different types of magazines through Libby and in-house print copies.
like I broke out $17 per download.
Yeah,
So,
that's pretty crazy.
Look, it's like, yeah, it's not.
Yeah, no, it's not that. So
Okay, I kind of agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Except for
Fine with that
recommendation.
one.
Yeah, that's,
you all concur with the
Yeah,
recommendation
yes.
to not continue Flipster access?
I agree.
Yes?
Susan, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Could just continue. I mentioned earlier, I don't have any information on New York Times at this point. So to be continued hopefully at our next meeting in terms of access. Is this an essential service? And it kind of straddles Parks Pass and Flipster. If it's cost prohibitive and we've got the access to articles through our databases, but also in-house copies, hard copies of the New York Times, and it's something we need to consider in terms of.
So do we have an online to the New York Times, or is this for the in-house subscription?
This is for the online New York Times.
Right. The only thing I would say is when you come down and you look at, there are a very small number of newspapers that actually provide primary source of information. Through the reporting with the, it's the Wall Street Journal, it's the New York Times, and the Washington Post is falling further and further behind in their ability to do that.
Yeah.
The Chronicle doesn't meet that.
No.
The Herald doesn't meet that.
The Examiner doesn't.
Yeah, the
No.
Mercury, yeah.
No,
So,
that's true.
if you're providing a service, this might be one to keep because it's a primary news source
Yes, that's,
as it goes through. But you may want to have some kind of, I don't know if it's fair enough or doable, but I subscribe to the New York Times online. I probably don't need to be one of the people using the library to do that. So is there a way for the people who are homebound or something like that
To
so
prioritize use.
to prioritize use through that?
Right.
But then you say, well, then you're driving down you had your cost per online view, now that goes way up. But
Right.
is that an essential service to provide primary source of news as it goes through? That is the question in front of the trustees. And since there's no recommendation made at this time, we don't have to make one today. I just throw that out for consideration in the future.
I have a question.
Phil.
How the New York Times, the paper copy at the library, is there people fighting over it? If we cut out this program, should we have a second paper there? That's a question.
So
'Cause I know a lot of people get down there and sit and read. I've seen them do it.
yeah, we ask people to share. We have had people in the past who come in and grab every single copy of all, they grab the Journal, the Financial Times, the New York Times, so that whoever comes in after them has to sit there and wait while they go through the whole stack. And so it's kindergarten. Can you read one at a time and share with your neighbors? Type of thing. So generally that works, and we haven't had,
All right.
nobody's come to fisticuffs over the New York Times at the fireplace.
Because
But we could explore getting multiple copies if needed, and I'm hoping that we'll have more information from the state by the time we next meet on online New York Times access.
Right, this is specifically online.
Online, we're talking about online, yes.
Okay.
And my question is, how many people are actually using it from our area?
That, the state needs to provide me with those statistics.
Okay, that's
Okay.
another possibility.
Right.
Because if not that many people are using it, there's no point in spending the money to keep it going for one or two people,
I highly doubt it's just one or two people using it.
I know the print is highly used.
Yeah.
That's very highly used.
Yeah. Okay, so that to be continued. Call Academy, this one really affects staff more than anything in how we do. I mentioned just part of our strategic plan training sessions. We do always have dedicated funds to staff training. I think we've been fine with that. Call Academy access is nice. I want to keep the budget status quo at this point in time. And again, this is another wait and see game, whether or not this will go behind a paywall or not. So I don't have a recommendation for call besides budget status quo. Cooperative ebook purchasing. Last year we sunsetted Hoopla because it was becoming cost prohibitive. And we offset overdrive spending with the remaining Hoopla funds. I want to increase the overdrive budget. The books that we purchase through there are available to our patrons both through Palaces and through Libby. I don't know what's going to happen with Palaces at this point in time. The state doesn't have any information, again, if we're going to see a subscription type of model like with Overdrive, if they're going to have money to continue to maintain even baseline, maintain the platform servers, all of those things that go on behind the scenes. So no recommendation there at this point besides increasing the Overdrive budget since we eliminated Hoopla.
Sounds good.
The next big recommendation is the federal funding and E-rate. I'm not optimistic about where things are going with the FCC and the different lawsuits that are ongoing, and I think it would be wise, because internet is an essential library service, to plan to see the elimination of E-rate. Now, we could keep it status quo, which is what I do, which is usually apply our E-rate credits so that you see a zero line for internet and telephone service, and we could do a budget adjustment and either look to the foundation for additional funds as part of that, or pull money from reserves during the fiscal year. I personally would rather budget for it up front and do a budget adjustment mid-year and shift the funds if we need to do that, rather than not have them on hand so that we can pay bills in a timely fashion.
I think that's a program that we're
Yeah, we
gonna
have
have
to
to
do.
figure out. Maybe the park pass of $5,000 goes down here to pay for this.
Yeah.
It helps us out. This program on the, we have to have.
Yep.
So
Yeah, agree with that.
there's no,
Yeah, budget for it. That's
Yeah,
what
we have
your
to
question
budget
is,
that.
is do I budget for it?
Do I budget for it?
yeah,
Yes.
we budget
But
for it,
the answer is
yes. There
Thank
has
you.
to be.
Yes, good. Then I will do so. Okay, this is very helpful. Hopefully I'll have more information on some of these things at our next meeting, but I will incorporate funds for internet and telephone service and provide you all with an option with regards to Parks Pass in terms of lower costs and things like that based on where we are with the budget, knowing that the board has identified it as a not essential service.
Yeah.
And I took it from earlier that you're talking to the foundation financial folks, so there's a dialogue going back and forth, so they have some idea of where we're headed.
Not at this point, because I wanted more feedback from the Board of
That is
Trustees,
good,
but
right.
I usually have a memo started that goes side by side with my budget report that I provide to Alex with, here's where we are, here's what's going on.
And that's on a monthly basis?
Not on a monthly basis, but on a annual basis when we do the budget ask
Right.
at this
so,
time of year.
They're trying to make decisions, we're trying to make decisions in real time. I just want to make sure that there's enough communication so nobody's surprised and everybody's happy at the end.
Yes.
I think on the 7th, we'll have a clear what we said. I think with that idea we come up, I think we should plan on having something solid to give to the foundation the 7th. We could, where we want to go.
Okay.
Does that seem feasible to everybody here? That we set that date as a hard,
Sure.
give them some hard
Yes.
numbers?
Yeah.
That's good.
It could be another long meeting, but
It's okay. It's important.
we'll make it work. All right. Let's move down to number 9, review and reaffirm library policies and provide staff with direction.
So before you are 2 policies for review. Our bulletin board policy, which seems funny, but we've got one and it's important, and then the gathering place policy. So the bulletin board policy was last reviewed and revised by the trustees in May of 2010. We used to have more bulletin boards than we do now. One of them at the Harrison Library came down, and we kind of combined 2 of the boards there, and then we took down the bulletin board inside the Park Branch Library. It used to be in a rather obscure place, and there's not a great spot for a like a community bulletin board type of thing there. The bulletin board's at the Harrison Memorial Library for library programs, library policies, and then the other board is, I can't remember if it's a state requirement or not, but it's for posting of city meetings. So that's where the agendas get posted for the meeting that we're at here, in addition to the post office and outside of City Hall. The city also, Community Activities Department, put up a bulletin board. It just happened to time out well with the pandemic, so there's a bulletin board outside of the Park Branch Library. We use that in lieu of posting inside the library during the pandemic for meeting, all the city meetings. But it was a request that came through on our community conversations that the Community Activities Department undertook to reinstall the old bulletin board. I don't know how many of you have seen the pictures in a tribute to yesteryear, creating Carmel, of everybody standing in front of the old Carmel bulletin board, and it was actually just a fence. And so, lost shoe, do you need a ride? I need a ride over the hill next week. But very, very much community oriented, and it has, it's a frequent request for people to just post any and all the things. And so that's what that board is for. Because it's next to us, we keep an eye on it and take down old things, and when we put library programs up, that type of thing, but we don't have library jurisdiction over it, so this bulletin board policy doesn't apply to that. It's just fulfilling the need. The changes in the policy that I'm recommending you see with the strike-throughs and the underlines, the red text, are just clarifying and updating language. You know, mostly what we get are our flyers. There used to be a time where we had newsletter things and an O-ring for that. We don't have that any longer. And keeping because we have limited space on our bulletin board, keeping those postings to nonprofit organizations and keeping things rotating as they go through, so things that aren't going to sit up there all year. Yeah. Are there any questions about the proposed updates on the bulletin board policy?
No, I read that over.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's pretty simple, and this just really cleans things up and clarifies things.
Yeah,
All right, so
looks like
moving.
there's no change for
No-
the next policy.
Pardon me?
This policy's working well, the room policy?
The room policy is working well. The only
Every
small
place.
change I had was I realized that the last time we looked at this policy, we had a discussion. One of the discussions we had was about what is a group? Is it 2 people or 5 people? And under the section entitled Room Usage Policies, right there at the top, it said 2 or more people, groups no smaller than 2 or more people. But that language hadn't been corrected in the introduction. So I've made that update, and that the policy is working well. I think I did note in my staff report that, you know, we do make exceptions from time to time for one-off uses if it's some sort of Zoom emergency. But that is a whole different ball of wax and a whole different need. The gathering place can't accommodate those types of things on the regular, and I don't know where the state grant funds are these days, probably all gone, but I was looking for some money for a Zoom room type of thing for individual use. So I haven't given up on that. I'd like to.
You're saying one person, if there's nobody has it reserved as needed, if somebody really needed it, it's not being used, no one can use it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's open to, when it's not reserved, and we post the calendar every morning for when the times are scheduled. But in between those times, people are free to use the space.
Nobody's arguing, nobody's complaining.
Nobody's arguing, nobody's complaining, there's no fights, staff aren't having a problem enforcing this. We have our regular users, and
You're getting good usage out of it.
and we're getting good usage out of it, so.
Great.
That's
It's working.
That's great.
But yeah, just that minor change.
Okay.
Oh, Monday mornings, the Carmel Crafts Guild meets, and they do tabletop blooms.
Weaving.
Yeah, we've got the garden club meets, Carmel Cares comes in. Yeah,
See them?
that's what I'm gonna do when I'm retired. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Okay. I guess,
You need a motion?
yeah, well,
A motion, yes, for both of the policies, just to approve the proposed changes to both policies.
yeah, go-
I make a motion to approve the bulletin board policy and the gathering place policy as amended and presented.
okay.
A second?
Second. Can I have a roll call for that?
Susan Murphy.
Yes.
Phil Pardue.
Yes.
Mary Jo Williams.
Yes.
John Krischer.
Yes.
Approved, thank you.
All right. Okay.
So,
Very, very interesting meeting. So then we will plan on meeting Wednesday, the 7th.
Thank you very much.
Well, you're very more welcome.
Wednesday the
At 9 a.m.
Yep.
And we'll get into the budget, and
Great.
we will put a place setter for the agreement with the architect.
Yes.
It'll be there.
Okay. Placeholder, yeah.
Great.
Any other items you'd like to bring up on this special meeting?
nope, just budget,
Well,
all budget.
I thank you very much for all your input and your time today. It's been very,
All right, yeah.
very interesting, and I think we accomplished an awful lot.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.